Good morning. It's 7:49 a.m. on March 23rd, 2020 in Dallas, Texas. And I said when I first started making these videos that I've been having this experience for the last 6 months since I've been allowed to sleep inside, where when I wake up in the morning, I look like I'm 20 years older than I am. Even when I was just sleeping on the street, I didn't wake up with like this weird sunken eye thing, and these things that had happened to my face. And then, when you wake up in the morning, it's like there's something that is happened overnight that you're unconsciously processing. And so when you wake up, it usually gives you information about the day. In my case, sometimes about the next 2 days. I don't know how much of it's about clairvoyance, and I don't know how much of it is about this particular thing that happens where there is a mandatory 2 day period when it comes to information connected to executive orders, or the 48 hours that are mandatory clearing periods in connection with executive compensation packages. And I mention this because there's some information I think everybody in America and maybe the world needs to know right now. I'm just going to try to keep this very succinct. In 2008, there were changes to and proposed and passage of a bill under the concerning changes to the Food and Drug Administration. It was called the Monograph Over the Counter Non Prescription Drug Act. And I didn't know exactly what that meant, but what I did know is that the monogram for my name, my initials, was CCC. And CCC is actually almost like a handle that comes with certain kinds of filings that are put into the Edgar database for the Securities and Exchange Commission, and or for other organizations or entities where certain companies are mandated to make filings to be compliant with regulatory requirements for the administration of their corporations. And I had noticed this at some point in time a while ago, but that CCC was kind of like the beginning of the serial number, the beginning of the file number, or the filing number that comes with a lot of things that are entered into the Edgar database. And so it's always very, very consternating to me that if I am trying to track something and then I'm immediately, bam, attracted to the SEC filing for that company or for that entity, it's like that's like a spot on confirmation. And I'm not the only one that knows this. When, I've had my stuff spied on, especially when all I had access to was computers at the public library at the Texas Workforce Solutions. And had my stuff spied on, and then I had to track not only what I was tracking, but how my stuff had been spied on and how it had been stolen and used, and, trying to figure out who would be the appropriate people to report to. And also suspecting, as I have for a long time, that while I've been trafficked in Texas, that they like to set up these phone trap scenarios where I believe I'm making a phone call to a federal reporting body, or I believe I'm making a phone call to connect with, like, say, a member of Senate's congressional staff. But it's like some sort of like little simulation that they put together where they hire somebody to play a scenario where they pretend to be representing somebody else, and then it doesn't actually go to them. Now, if that sounds like too extreme, or that seems too paranoid, look at where we are right now and what's going on. And because nobody's ever gotten back to me, and what I try to report as crime later shows up as a usually state-sponsored cover your ass attempt to steal trade secrets or to steal business plans and then mingle it with stuff that has been reports of fraud to accomplish any number of missions or to do any number of other crimes. It's hard to say, right? But what is not hard to say is that these things are ongoing. And so, the fact that my name is Charity and that my initials, my monogram, CCC, I know is exploited in order to launder money and to launder assets in connection with various corporate entities for any number of reasons. And my concern now has increasingly become that this is actually state-sponsored policy, that there's actually an active conspiracy on behalf of the Texas government. Not just the current Texas government, but members of the past Texas government that are involved in federal matters, including former department heads and former and that were also members, no, currently in the goddamn Senate. You know, the thing about Senate, you only get two senators per state. So if one of them blows it, I mean, you might have one to back you up. And if both of them blow it, you're kind of screwed. It's an entire element of the government that's like pretty much literally closed off to you. Especially when they do this thing where you try to contact somebody from another state because they have a committee assignment that's relevant to what you're trying to contact them about, and then they do some sort of geographic cattle rustling. And that's another reason why this monograph thing is so concerning to me. One of the things that had happened was I was sleeping on the street, and I had this dream. And I'll just give it to you. It was very unique. It was not like something that had happened before. I thought it was almost prophetic. I wake up, and so in this dream, I wake up and I'm walking through a big, expansive, central square of some sort. But I wasn't familiar with the geography. I'd never seen it before. And I come up to this building that looked like an official building. I wasn't sure what kind of building, but I remember the color of the stone. It wasn't like a white marble building, and it wasn't like the typical kind of granite building. It was kind of like this reddish brownish stone, and there's multiple layers, and it had a dome on top. And as I'm walking up to this building, there's doors, and then there's one door. It's not the central door, the main door right in front of me. There's other doors that are kind of off to the side, and there's one door, and it's like an office, like an office door, and there's like a glass window, like a glass pane in the door. It's kind of like that bubble, like that textured glass, so it's not, you can't see right through it. And then there's like an imprint. There's like a translucent imprint on the door, and it has a glyph on it, and something said, "That's your icon." I'm like, "What?" It's like, that's yours, that's your family." And I'm like, "That's my family." It's like, "Yeah, that is your." And see, the thing is that back in 2008, there a lot of the light codes that were being downloaded were connected to glyphs that were similar to the ones that were on some versions of representations of the Mayan calendar. And I believe these were actually like cosmic light codes that were coming to Earth. And then what happened was is that they got appropriated, and that somebody took those light codes and they took glyphs and they took symbols connected to those light codes, and they copyrighted it, and they created their own cryptos. So they literally took what was supposed to be sacred symbolism that was connected to the cultural and ancestral heritages of people on this planet, appropriated it after they captured in one way or another the people for whom that was meant to be an inheritance, either through detentions or through some sort of simulation that they had a mental illness or another kind of illness. And then somebody took the glyphs, took the actual visual representations, and copyrighted them as some sort of trademark or some sort of symbol connected to their business enterprise, and that they've been using those icons. They've been using things like these Mayan glyphs as part of a cryptocurrency that, for a time, was connected to very, very dangerous things. I believe that those that were connected to a particular, what was alleged at least to be massive narco cartel, were involved in and had access to the means by which to acquire the capacity to uh, uh, trademark and copyright a certain representation of the Mayan glyphs to create his own cryptocurrency, his own crypto. And so, like if you were on the streets and then all of a sudden you're running a string of Mayan glyphs, and there's all these other associations and all these other visual imprints that go along with it, depending upon how lucid you are and how you focus on it, you can actually track it as being transactions connected to certain activities. So when Chapo, for instance, ended up getting busted, it was almost like the currency got reassigned, and somebody else wanted Chapo's crypto. And I'm gonna leave it at that for that part, because I want to get back to this thing that happened in this dream I had. That around the time this happened in maybe early summer of 2017, and so I'm going up to the building, and seeing this glyph there, and I'm not going to describe the glyph, but what it did is it was a glyph that incorporated symbolic representations of three different elements, And I recognized it immediately. I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And like at some levels, like that totally makes sense to me. That makes sense that that's, my family. And then I entered the door. And when I entered the door, I'm in this open floor space, and it's like a rotunda, because the dome's above me, and so there's all of these halls, and there's options about where you can go down those halls, and I'm like, where is this? Like, this is, and I'm like, I've been in this building before. I know this building. I've been in this building before. I didn't know what it was, and I didn't find out what that building was until later on, the end of the summer, at the beginning of the fall, when I went to Austin, and I'd gone to Austin to help somebody file something and to check on something at the Supreme Court. And then I went to the Capitol building, and as I'm walking up to the back, the Capitol building from the back, I'm like, oh my God, that's the building from my dreams. That was a building I dreamed about. Now, if you go into the Capitol building, the doors that I'd seen were not on the outside. But once you walk in, then the way that the doors were aligned made sense. And then, so when I'm going into the rotunda and I'm standing into the rotunda, I'm like, go downstairs. And so I'm like, okay. And so later, I didn't go downstairs at the time, but later, when I was in Austin, I went downstairs. And there are several subterranean levels in the Capitol building in Austin. And I went through all of them that I had access to, and they're different. There's a very different characterization in each. There's a very different characterization and a very different kind of understanding of the value and importance of what Texas, at least in some ways, will acknowledge to be sort of the importance and the value of its state and its the people in its state. It was concerning to me what was underground. It's one thing to have a layer underground where you have offices and executive offices, or you have legislative offices. That's pretty common. But we're talking about several subterranean layers, and depending upon which way you end up going, at which level, it's like something has been submerged, something has been hidden, something has been kept quiet, and going down one of the halls, specifically on the lower level, the lowest level you could get to, they have pictures of these big, huge pictures of all the people, all the teams, presumably all the teams that have worked on the Capitol building and that have also worked on repairs to the Capitol building. And it is fascinating to see this timeline of people that actually put their own physical and manual labor into maintaining the Capitol building. Because the Capitol building in Austin is very unique to me that I've seen. When they have these different representations of Lady Justice, what it depicts, I think, says something about what's supposed to be the character of the people. And in the state of Virginia, I'm from Virginia, and the motto for the state of Virginia is Sic Semper Tyrannis, which means death to the tyrants. And the depiction of Lady Justice is a woman who's, in like a gown, who's got her foot on the chest of someone she's slayed, and she's holding a sword, and one of her, breasts is exposed. This is the motto. This is the like logo for the state of Virginia. But the representation of Lady Justice, or the representation of the feminine in Texas, is different. She's atop the Capitol rotunda, and on one hand she holds a sword, but her sword is pointed down, and then the other hand she holds a star that is aloft, and it's almost like the representation of Lady Justice, but she's not blindfolded, right? Now, she's not blindfolded in Virginia either, just so you know. But there's very different implication about what it means to be holding aloft the star and then to be stomping on the corpse of the slain tyrant, right? And so this is like a very significant kind of symbolic but also spiritual problem that I think is going on with me personally, and that may be going on a larger level in terms of this like karmic historic struggle that we're dealing with in the United States and positioning the world. Is this, I don't really understand why Texas won't let me leave. I don't understand why Texas won't acknowledge me as a human being, because whatever it is that they thought that they were going to do in the misrepresentation of their own feminine is just never ever going to, like, it's never ever going to assimilate me. And that is what I'm talking about. these understandings. You want the capital that came from me being born in Virginia. Every time you steal my documents and you force me to get another security from the state of Virginia in order to open up another fucking account in the state of Texas. You're stealing from my people. You're stealing from the state I come from. You're stealing from the spirit I come from. And what do you want me to do? Who's the fucking star you want me to hold up? Right? I just want to know. Because there are no stars that you've shown me in Texas that deserve to be held up. Right? And this is the problem. If you're going to try to invoke this power of the feminine in order to back you up and give you justice and raise you up above the waterline, right? Then you need to do something to actually demonstrate you deserve to be that star. Because what I saw when I walked in the Capitol building, and I'm walking around and, talking with the ancestors, and I'm not just talking with, the guys who were there in the first legislature, or the guys that were in the first governor's house, or even the first, the guys that were the first chief justices or the attorneys generals. I mean, the old timers love to talk with me. The dead guys love to talk with me. It's this weird thing I got. Texas dead guys, the dead old timers in Texas love to talk with me. I love talking with them. But as we get further along in the history of Texas, something happens, and it was very omnipresent and very stark when I was in the Capitol building in Austin, and I was seeing the way that they prioritized their representations of what their own history was. And so I saw this particular kind of monogram, or this particular icon that they said, "This is your family, this is your family." And then later, when I was remembering what had happened in Houston, later when I went back to Houston, there's a building in the downtown of Houston. And the symbolic representation of this building, the downtown house in Houston, is very significant. I was told at the time that if I wanted to talk to members of the staff of a senator from the state of Texas, that the office was located in that building. But what happened was, one day I went to go talk to the staff member, and I got off at the wrong floor. I got off at the floor above, one floor above where this office was located. And on that floor was this little tiny office that said it was the Attorney General, that it was the Attorney General of Texas's office. And so I'm like, wait a second, they have a local office of the Attorney General? Holy shit. I've been trying to contact the Attorney General and won't get back to me. I'm going to go into the office, and now I'm going to try to talk to them. I'm going to talk to them about how to get assistance, how to file charges. So I'm in the lobby, and they have a camera in the lobby, and I can see the camera in the lobby. And then I go and try to talk to the woman behind the glass. And it was like, I don't believe it was actually an Attorney General's office. I don't believe it was an official government office. I believe that the Attorney General knows about it. I believe that other people in this, the Texas legislature know about it. But when I went in there and she asked me what I needed, she got the story. She got it recorded. I can't help you. That's not what we do here. Well, what do you do here? And then she said, well, we only deal with this. I'm like, well, that's not what it says, and that's not what it's represented as. I'm here. You asked me for information about my case. You asked me for what I need help with, and then you tell me that you don't do that. And I'm like, but even though it's under the jurisdiction of the Attorney General. So what is this? And it had something to do with, I think she said that they dealt with taxes. And I'm like, so there's a little tiny satellite office that says it represents that it's the Attorney General's office, but it only deals with one very specific thing connected to the Attorney General, and it's here in Houston. Why isn't this office in Austin? And why, if this is connected to the Attorney General's office, is it getting this whole story that's being recorded here in the lobby? And then as soon as I get the story, telling me that it can't help me. The thing is that monogram that I had that dream about is in a deconstructed form. The same sort of graphic depictions that are presented on the outside of that building. Now, in the monogram, or in the icon, they're all together. Those three elements are together. But before I knew about what was happening, I'd gone to this building, and they had it in a deconstructed form. Each element appears on the outside of the building as part of the architecture. But what also appears on the outside of the building as part of the architecture, that's not a part of the icon, is this row that lines the entire exterior of cow heads, of cow skulls, bull skulls, right? Skulls of bulls that have the horns. And it's almost like, I come from a family of hunters and trappers. Okay, that's I know whatever else you think you might know from me. My actual family, my actually biological family, my Appalachian family are not drug head. They're not junkies. They're not opiate dealers or opiate users. They're people that know the land. They trap, they hunt, they know how to handle the responsibility that comes with engaging with nature to get their needs met. They are users of firearms both professionally and as part of the culture that understands that sometimes you need to be able to go out and get food for your family and bring it back and know what to do with it and how to use everything that comes with that experience. So when I see a mounted bull skull, I know that it can mean a couple of things, and what it probably means is it's somebody's prize. Almost. You went out, you hunted, and when you hunted, you acquired an animal, and then after you butchered the animal and you acquired the pelt and you did what you needed to do in order to make sure that the meat and the bones and whatever else you got from it, including if you used the organ meat, was made available for your family to eat and stored properly, so it could be used for as long as that animal in the body, the death of that animal was able to sustain your family. That you might have the head, and you might take the head, and you might get the head taxidermy, and you might put the head on your wall to say, yes, this is what I got for my family. This is what we got. This is and in some ways it's part of like the sportsmanship of it, right? This was my kill. I went out and I hunted this myself. And so this building, which presumably has an office for the Attorney General on one floor, and presumably has the office of the Senator on the other floor, has all of these cow skulls going around all four corners of the building. While it also has in a deconstructed form this icon. And see, the thing is that I've been here for 3 years, and like I said, those Texas old timers love to talk to me, the dead guys. And I find stuff all the time, but then it gets stolen, and nobody takes a report, and everybody acts like a jackass. And because I haven't consummated any relationship in Texas, I don't have any man to be my sponsor. So when I'm having this dream, part of me is like, well, is it actually a prophetic dream? Is it actually part of the spirit of this state that has no problem showing me things that are about the history that are very valuable and that are, basically welcoming me in, but then also exposing me to an ancestral rage that exists in Texas? I really believe there are certain ancestors in the state of Texas that are fucking furious at what has happened, that they feel like it's a complete disgrace, and they feel it's completely contemptible. And it's one of those things where it's like the early days, like they're calling in help. They're calling in help from outside. And Texas has become the Mexicans. And it's not just about some ritual where you pretend to be Santa Anna in order to teach someone a lesson. They've literally betrayed their own people, and they've literally betrayed their own calling. And so this icon is supposed to be my brand. Like some cattle rustler said, oh, she got good stock. Bam, she's ours. And that basically I was claimed as a cow, a nice, docile, gentle, grass eating cow, until it was time to slaughter me by some Texas family connected to whoever had offices in that building. Now, the thing is, I actually went to Austin, and I actually went to the Capitol building. The Capitol building had its own conversation with me. It might be different. It might have actually been a sincere, kind of like unconscious revelation of my relationship to Texas. I might even have family that comes from old Texas. My dad never knew his dad. Doesn't know where he's from. I might be here actually because of that. But the point is that after this monogram bill got passed on the federal level, I was furious myself because I know exactly what it is. There's several laws that if you look in the right place in the state of Texas, in the Texas legal code, that were coded to have an expiration date. Some of them expired in 2017, and some of them expired in 2019. And a lot of them have to do with the Texas Health and Human Services, and one or more of them had to do with telemedication services. And there was one that was completely disgusting to me because I believed that I had seen it in action before, and it was part of what had afflicted me and part of what I was trying to get people to pay attention to. And it talked about reimbursement of Medicare cost for co-location of services to multiple providers of a single session for children. So the understanding is that multiple telemedication providers in one session can be providing services to a child and bill it to Medicare. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Are you talking about a bunch of drug dealers getting a bundle together on a appointment to telemedicate a fucking child? So when you're in that shelter and that child is acting in a way that somebody has diagnosed as being ADHD, that what's really happening is there's some compression wave that is broadcast at that child as part of their economy, and that they're using these telemedication sessions as a way to literally launder through children and accounts and services connected to children, financing connected to the companies allowed to consider themselves involved with telemedication. Because my understanding of the way this works is that it's actually a crypto and it's actually a cryptocurrency. And part of the way that that happens is that the crypto itself is identified with an icon. In fact, if you look up online, I don't know how many people actually do this. I know more people than will acknowledge, and that's part of my. It's part of why they don't want to talk to me right now. There are people that actively participate in these cryptocurrencies, and so you can find these repositories and these databases online that talk about the progress of a particular cryptocurrency, and all of them got their own logo, right? They all got their own icon. It's some sort of symbol, and so you know when you see that symbol that what you're directing at that symbol is a symbolic representation of the currency you're working at that time you're working that crypto. Okay? What the fuck is this Monogram food and drug bill? I believe it's literally about taking corporate trademarks and brand logos and allowing them to establish cryptos. And that part of what's going on with this bullshit they're doing right now is you got a bunch of people that already signed up with their ranch to acquire livestock. And they're gonna fucking auction off the fucking fee agreements or the fucking service agreements we're supposed to be signing when we go in to get our test or we go in to get our resources or our emergency aid. And they're gonna put them into groups and they're gonna auction them off. And somebody is gonna start fucking running around, walking around, driving around like we're their fucking cows. That they're literally that's part of what their little fucking deal with the fucking futures markets are. That this futures command is about trying to get us all dumbed down so that we're nothing more than a bunch of fucking animals in a pen. And whoever the fuck was able to get their goddamn trademark in on time is going to be able to claim a certain number of people as their human capital. Kind of like happened in Puerto Rico, right? Anybody know about that? Anybody follow that? I mean, the state of Puerto Rico did. You saw their plan about a year and a half later, right? But then they did something like that after Harvey. If you signed up for emergency service, right, you had to go through a whole process. Even if you had been receiving services before, you had to go through a process of re-signing up, and they'd already done it before. They do this periodically if you're in the social services network. It's why you never get anything. You never get a fucking house. You never get a job. All they do is they hook up these futures agreements using your identity and you circulate as somebody else's human capital for a period of time. I think the average is 30, 31 days. If you're working 31-day T-notes in conjunction with a buried, fraudulently acquired so-called student loan that came out in conjunction with the 1993 Omnibus Act, then the period's usually about 31 days. All right, if you don't see that part of the 1993 Omnibus Act, it may not make sense. You just know that like every month something major happens, and then sometimes these are shorter term agreements. Sometimes they may not, sometimes they last 3 days. And if you don't confirm the transaction after the third day, somebody swaps out a future, and then you're on a new account, which may or may not be inside or may not actually have a conversation involved, right? And so this is what they're doing. I really believe that when Congress passed that Monogram bill, that basically what it was is it was a way to kind of tear this concept of a monogram, And the monograph, in my case, happens to be a handle for Edgar, the fucking SEC database. But I'm not fucking reporting I'm not fucking filing your SEC report. You're laundering money through me. And when I fucking ping or when I fucking hit right on your SEC report and that shit comes flooded down, it's goddamn 100% confirmation that somebody illegally expropriated my assets and let your fucking ass try to claim credit for it. And if you don't like it, because I'm not giving you good stuff, because I'm keeping my business plans secret, because I'm keeping the actual term, I've never showed them to anybody. So when my business ideas show up on somebody else's profile, I know your fucking ass was part of a goddamn network of state-sponsored spies stealing my shit and trying to claim it as yours. And if we got this problem right now where people are literally using a manufactured bioweapon in order to kidnap people and extort them into agreeing to participate in this system, you need to understand. I'm going to post this video today. They are literally so fucking stupid. They are literally so morally bankrupt that they are treating us like we are their own private chattel property. We are their chattel, their human chattel. They are so fucking arrogant that they think they're entitled to do that. And the problem is they can't sustain it. Even if somebody thought there was any logic or any sense or any justification for this kind of process, these guys are so fucking incompetent, they can't even take care of their own herd. They can't. And that's why they have to simulate this bullshit emergency response that they call a natural disaster or that they call a public health outbreak. They are so fucking incompetent that if they buy 100 cows, they can't even fucking figure out how to feed them. I'm serious. It's completely unacceptable. Slavery is against the 13th Amendment. If at some point Texas thought it was above the fucking federal constitution, it should have fucking seceded. If Texas really fucking thought that its own little fucking version of playing little fucking masonry on everybody and fucking doing doublespeak and saying one thing in the constitutional law and then expressing it and activating it and implementing it outside of the actual formal setting of accountability, and it was going to do these little performance pieces as if it was in some sort of bordello when you're called to go appear at court, it should have fucking seceded. It had no fucking right to stay a part of the federal system, the federal constitutional system of the United States, and engage in outright theft of the federal government and laundering and embezzlement of the federal government, including via the presidency, including via the office of the president, twice in 20 fucking years, right? It had no fucking right to do that, and then put the entire rest of the people of the United States and everybody else in the fucking world with whom the United States would rather have a relationship on the fucking line for their fucking fraud and theft. And I'm sorry, I'm not going down with you, Texas. This is not about some sort of symbolic or symbiosis. You know, when I came here, I was willing to stand up and do the right thing. Some of your old timers like me. You don't get to make me your fucking sweet little, nice little, docile, grass-eating cow. I'm sorry, grass-smoking cow. Fuck that. Everybody needs to know that this is what's going on. Okay? I think whatever that shit was that was going on with that building down in fucking Houston, you know, I mean, I'm not going to get all fucking territorial. If that's literally your fucking sigil, if that's literally your crypto that you used to finance your last fucking election campaign, using pictures of your own fucking family, I'm not in your fucking family. I'm not your fucking cow. I don't have any desire to be a part of your fucking ranch scheme. And what I've seen is a fucking crime. You understand? Those elements are just as much mine as they are anybody else's. You do not own the sun. You do not own the rain. You do not even own the fucking river, man. You don't own that shit. It doesn't work that way. And if you abuse your access to it by trying to do some fucking shit like this, the ancestors are going to let you know you fucked up. And I'm hoping that a bunch of other people end up getting the fucking word, and they get the word out, and we start doing something about this. We're not fucking chattel, assholes. You took it too far. And the thing is, you already fucking know you can't sustain it. So you need to fucking quit now. Now's the time to do your Jimmy Baker movement, assholes. Now's your time to come to the fucking Jesus you keep telling us we're supposed to come to. Now's your time to confess and shut this fucking shit down.